Yeah, most of the videos here are about immersing in your experience and the direct aspects of sensation and acute approaches and different creative techniques and ways to engage with this. This video is definitely going to be a little different because this is actually speaking directly to you right now. We're aware that the world in this relative sense seems to be changing. There seems to be a lot of upheaval. We could even call it a transition, however that seems to be. And there's a sense of fear that seems to be very pervasive in a collective way. A lot of you are paying extra attention to the news and really kind of looking for ways to fulfill certain confirmation biases. And that's just being really direct here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the aspects of what's happening in our relative world don't affect us or don't matter. Yet, what really tends to start to happen is we dig in a little too deeply and overemphasize these things and forget about really the most important aspect of all of this, and that's what's immediately here. If we start taking the bait and falling for it, we will start to retract, and a lot of you have begun that process, almost like a spring hibernation, we could call it. So this video is more of a direct conversation. Would love to actually bring this into the forefront. We see a lot of things happening in the United States. We see a lot of fear raising to the surface. We see a lot of upheaval, and in this political sphere, in this economic sphere, we could say, they're starting to take the forefront of our attention. And really, that's exactly how these identities start to gain traction here. What identities can be really good at, especially in these perceived leadership roles, is enrolling other identities to get fired up. And really what the best method to start to control people or start to affect people's experience is to instill a sense of fear. And that's what we're starting to pick up here. I'm starting to notice a lot of retraction, a lot of buckling down, a lot of putting emphasis and attention into these relative ways of protecting ourselves. And to be really clear, there's not really a problem with that, although what is happening is a form of displacement that is starting to create essentially an entire sphere of fear that tends to feed itself. This isn't one of those New Age talks where we're looking at fear versus love. Instead, what we're really looking at is your fear in the forefront of your experience on a day-to-day basis? And if so, how much does that have to do with what seems to be going on politically right now here in the United States of America? If that seems to be taking the forefront of your attention, I have one really simple and direct recommendation. Stop watching the news. Filter your information a little bit more directly. This is a practical recommendation. Choose to read the things that need to be read. Don't watch the news. Turn off the TV and consume less media this way, because what I'm starting to notice is that collectively people are moving into a retracted space. And even though that's not inherently right or wrong, there is something that gets displaced in that, and that basically starts to set us on a course of, I could say, a longer cycle. And we can supersede that by being more direct. Get into the aspects of what's going on. Notice the thoughts around the fear about what's coming, about what's going to happen, about how bad things are going to get, and really move into where that contraction seems to be taking place. You feel it somewhere. But even more than that, there will be some aspects of action that are necessary. I highly recommend that you start doubling down on immersing in your engagement with the path. Work closely with a teacher, meet somebody frequently, because right now, more than ever, it's best not to move back into protection mechanisms of the identity, because those things will essentially want to become reaffirmed right here, right now. This is the precipice of something. And I'm not saying that we need to move into love versus fear. That's not really what the pointing here is. It's more about this kind of long-term cycle of we all need to buckle down, we need to protect ourselves, and we need to be wary. What I'm encouraging you to do now is start practicing aspects of what feels more like a personal risk. Start to engage more, even if that looks like something within your community. Start to engage even more. Do your best not to fall for the I need to pull back. And those of you who feel like you have a really strong connection with intuition, if your intuition is telling you that it's some time to rest or time to move into some stillness and quiet, that's a little bit different. What I am saying overall is I've noticed on a more global scale or a collective scale, there is this sense of fear feeding fear, which is basically the way that the identity works. We could take that particular duality of fear versus love and to live in a state of love or a place of love versus a place of fear. That is actually what we're really speaking to is truest nature and identity and how those particular things want to intercede with each other. So right here, right now, if you've started to pull back from the path, if you started to find ways to essentially buckle down and prepare for the future and you're worried about some potential future moment, this is your call out. This is your cue. Step into your life more directly. And if that looks like some form of activism, fine. But more than anything else, be with the experience of what's going on now. Because overall, what I can say is there is a very global sense, and I've been getting this a lot through one-on-one sessions, there's a sense of needing to pull back and protect. If you allow yourself to do that, the more you do that, you will find yourself in a deep cycle of this sense of needing to protect something. And it will actually pull you away from your very visceral, vibrant, bold experience that's happening now. If you haven't been working with a teacher, or you have been working with me, or you've been working with someone else, make sure that you check in on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be all the time, but at least once every 28 days or so. A good rule of thumb for any sort of engagement with a pointer or a teacher is within a moon cycle, because we seem to have a natural biorhythm that seems to kind of correspond with the moon cycle there. Obviously, women have a more visceral aspect to that, but men have that too. So make sure you check in on a more regular basis. Here, people will meet every 2 weeks or every month, and that seems to work best. It keeps them in a place where they're able to remain connected. But we could even say, on a more practical level, if you're not meeting with someone who is somehow helping you work through whatever these thoughts seem to be and these fears seem to be, such as a therapist or someone else, we could say these are the times where some aspect of connection or mental health or spiritual engagement really seem to be of the most benefit. Otherwise, what you will find yourself doing is pulling into a recession, and you will see that that will start to influence others, and then we will all just collectively pull into a recession. This, right here, right now, is the perfect opportunity to move the other direction. We know how this goes. We could say collectively, within our civilization, within our culture, we've done this many times. We've done it over and over, and you can mark those moments. You can mark those moments through the pandemic with COVID. You can mark those moments here in America during the housing crisis, so on and so forth. It's just a continuous process. And yes, some of you say, well, if there's no doer, then I guess there's nothing to do. That's not entirely true. It's tricky. If there feels like there is a doer or someone that does have agency, make sure that agency is utilized and pointing toward engagement. I'm being really clear with that. I'll repeat that again. If there does feel like there is a doer in your experience, make sure what you're doing is more in alignment with your experience right here, right now, and staying engaged and immersed in your life. That is the key. When you hear the pointing, there is no doer, and that seems like you have to kind of imagine or picture that mentally, then the pointing isn't very clear. In other words, the pointing isn't really for you. This isn't intended to create frustration. It's just that you will know that there is no doer when you know there is no doer. It's tricky that way. But to use that as a way to justify disengagement is all too common. And so what I would say is, overall, that pointing doesn't really do much. It tends to give people an excuse or an out or a reason to check out of their experience, check out of their lives, check out of their engagement. Here is where we all start to come together. This is important. Yes, this experience that seems very temporal and unique right here, right now is key, but there's also this other aspect of how we interact in a community manner or connected, because what we find is as we go, these paradoxes continue to arise and they appear to be apparent contradictions in the experience. There is no one else, there is only us. It's kind of like that. Along the initial aspects of the path we get in, it feels very personal. It feels like there is no one else. This apparent experience of subject-object internalization. And then it suddenly splays itself open and expands, and then there is no one here. There is only all of this, which means there is only everyone else. It's kind of like that. So what I will say is, on a very practical level, stay engaged, keep working through or working with someone. If you're working with me, continue making appointments, whoever it is. If you're working with a therapist, stay consistent with that. But stay engaged, and more than anything else, turn off the TV. Just turn it off. If you find yourself every morning wanting to get into the news, I highly recommend that you start to practice what we can call initially the 50-50 approach. So tomorrow, if you are one of the people that looks at the news in the morning, don't do it tomorrow. Skip it. And the day after that, go ahead and look at the news. And while you're doing these things, really pay attention to what's happening internally, what you're feeling when you do look at the news, when you don't look at the news, and you're going to start to find another soothing mechanism. Something is convincing you that you're keeping yourself safe. But overall, right here, right now, everything's okay. It is. Everything's fine. And sure, the potential for some sort of disaster seems to be more on the forefront, but still, it's only potential. It's not actually the case right now. And then when something does arise, you will be able to handle that with a type of efficiency and intuition that will make it seem like a nothing burger. That it does seem to be this way. So whatever is convincing you, you need to remain prepared, that you need to have the insurance plan. I would highly recommend that you really look at that, because it's starting to interfere with the rest of your life. And what it's doing on a global scale is it's starting to pull all of us into what you can call a depression, which is an avoidance of something else. It's a repressed experience, a recession. We're receding, we're retracting. Stay engaged. Even though it's hard right now, stay engaged. Even if it seems like there's going to be some fears coming around financially, stay engaged. It's going to work out as long as some of us stay engaged. And truthfully, we are the ones who carry the torches. Those of us who are engaged in this path are the ones that will essentially, through example, show all of everyone else who's heavily identified a more authentic way to exist. And that seems to be really important and really key. So I'm speaking directly to you. If you feel like you've been pulling back, if you feel like you've been holding out or hiding on any level, if you feel like you've been retracting or receding, or if you feel like you've been in some sort of depressed place in terms of pulling away from your experience or your engagement, I'm talking specifically to you. Reach out, stay connected, stay immersed. This is the time. More than ever, this is the time. In the midst of these transitions, right now it is a great transition. And the key here is those of us who remain engaged, who remained absolutely in the midst of this, will essentially bring that transition about in a more efficient way. And it will prevent it from becoming too dark before the dawn. And it always does seem to be that way. It does get a little darker before the dawn, yet overall, this is the way, this is the path, this is how we go. And we don't have to essentially nurture our suffering here, because our suffering is simply just a perception of an experience. And there's a lot of fuel right now for the identity that needs that suffering as a point of reference. So challenge it. I would say I guess if we were to look at all the aspects of authenticity that are really crucial here, there's been a lot of conversation on this channel around curiosity. Now this conversation is moving a little bit more toward courage. Take the risks that are necessary to remain engaged in your experience and in your existence, and you will be the torchbearer that begins to, just through example alone, through really doing nothing, you will begin to light the torches of everyone else. Hopefully this is the beginning of a more interesting conversation. Comments and any kind of questions are always welcome, and my sense is we can probably continue on this because I have a feeling that this is pretty global for a lot of people. It's going to be okay. You are going to be okay. As long as there is an agent, as long as there is a sense of someone here that has a choice, choose to stay engaged. Do not pull back. Step in, and we will be able to see this all the way through. And until then, or as we go, look forward to hearing more from you, and thank you so much for all of your contributions and your eyes, your ears, and your overall participation in this. It's been beautiful and fantastic, and would love to continue seeing how this unfolds. So thank you.